Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
Hi, Pete. I'm an alcoholic. And I'd like to thank Sandy for asking me. It's nice to be here. You know, this meeting is, a lot smaller than it used to be. And the nice thing is that all the people that I don't like, they're not here anymore. So who is it responsible for that? And I'd like to take you to some of my other meetings. There's nothing worse than starting off with a joke and then having it not be funny, so I'm just going to sit. No, I'm not. I wasn't born in California. I grew up back in Pennsylvania in a place where the Almanac of American Politics calls a rural industrial slum. And the nice part of that is that you can see, everybody has every car they ever owned in their front yard. You can just pretty much see that they had the 57 Chevy followed by the 61 Ford, and sort of how it was there. And I didn't live in the rural, in the slum part of the rural industrial slum. I lived in the nice part because my dad was an industrialist. And the only thing I can tell you about this little town, it was like way normal. My grandfather was a town doctor and he lived across the bridge, and my grandparents were Russian immigrants and they lived up the street, and my aunts and uncles, one lived on one side and one lived behind us. And we would come home from school, and sometimes we would eat lunch at Grandma's house, and sometimes we would eat lunch at Aunt Annie's house, and we would all sleep at my cousin's and they'd sleep at our place. And we rode our bicycles till 10 at night and played soldier in the woods and swam in the creek, and no one locked their doors. The New York Times Sunday magazine did a story about our town because it never had any crime. And the only thing that the police did was just when people had too much to drink, take them home and put them in bed, and that's where I grew up. So there was certainly not anything about my family or the city where I grew up that would predispose me to alcoholism. But the thing was, I was like a really neurotic kid. I felt like the other kids were better friends with each other than they were with me, and that the other kids, I was less than them and separate from them. And I was also a scared kid. I always thought that something bad was getting ready to happen, and I remember the school nurse would come in and whisper something to the teacher, and I would be sure that she told the teacher they just found out I was terminally ill, and I would ask the kid in front of me, I'm going to die, aren't I? And the kid would just say no, Gosh, and then I went to high school, and it wasn't any better. I was like a social moron. I had horn-rimmed glasses and braces, and I had a pocket protector before any of the Nerds movies came out, and I hung around with the really cool guys. But I wasn't one of the cool guys. I was like a sidekick, like Patsy Weber or something. And I just, God, when I was little. When I was in middle school or elementary school, we would go on a vacation, and we would have to come home because I would have a pain in my side and it wouldn't go away. And they even took my appendix out in hopes that we could go on vacations. And I would stay over at my friend's house, and the parents would bring me home throwing up at 4 a.m. because just staying 4 doors down the street created too much anxiety in me when I was 10 years old, And I would stay with my grandfather. He was a widower, and he had this great big old house, and he would go out to deliver a baby or go to the emergency room, and I would go with him because I was scared to stay in his big house by myself. And consequently, I learned just enough about medicine to become a hypochondriac. So then it came time to go away to college, and I told the guidance counselor, nobody would marry her, Miss Craig. I said, I want to go to school in Ohio. And she said, why would you like to go to school in Ohio? And I said, because you can drink at 18 in Ohio. And I thought, hey, that's as good a criteria as anything. And so I went to college, and to this Methodist laundromat for unwashed minds in Cleveland. And I was just the same. scared and felt like a fish out of water, and I did okay. I pledged a fraternity, and I got okay grades, and I played sports. But I was always just like I was when I was born, you know, from the time I was born, separate from and different than and less than, and that everybody else seemed to be more connected to each other, and I wasn't somehow connected. And then in the spring quarter of my freshman year, I was with this guy named Steve Strong. I'll never forget, he drove a little blue car and drank Duke beer. He was from Pittsburgh. And we went into Reed's Bar, which was the college bar, which had become an important institution to me. And that's where I met Eve, the barmaid. And she was this platinum blonde, buxom woman. She was like about 70. She had been a stripper back in New Jersey or something. And she said, "What do you have, honey?" And I said, and I could see I was going to get served. And I wasn't going to just get served the 3.2% beer that you're allowed to get between 18 and 21, but served. And I said, "Well, I'll have a shot. That's it, a shot." And she said, "A shot of what?" I said, "A shot of gin. That's it, a shot of gin." So I had like 10 or 12 of them, you know. And so I'm riding around this guy's car, and I'm throwing up out the window. And I'm saying to him, "Can you see the stars? Can you smell the flowers? Isn't college great? And you know, you're the best friend I ever had." I knew this guy like all of a week, and I was euphoric. Now, the only other time I was ever euphoric was when I got my appendix out, and they prepped me with the Demerol, and I told the nurse, "You have beautiful hair and beautiful hands," and I gave her my phone number. I was like 14, right? I gave her my phone number, and the second time I've ever felt like this in my life is when I'm drunk at Reed's Bar. And, you know, the book of Alcoholics Anonymous says that people drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol. And I love the effect produced by alcohol. Believe me, I didn't come to this program because I thought it was a virtue to be sober. You know, like I would still be drinking if I could. People say, "Oh, wow, 19 years, aren't you wonderful?" Like, it's like congratulating someone with hemorrhoids for not riding horses for 18 years. You know what I mean? Like, it's like I had a lot. It's like, I mean, I would have been, if I hadn't come here, I would have been dead a week later. So, I mean, it's not like I came here because I, like, wanted to become a better person, you know. It's just there wasn't anyone else that would take me. Well, anyway, I loved the effect produced by alcohol, and I was back on that bar stool the next night, and as my mother has put it many times, I managed to squeeze 4 years of college into 7 years. So anyway, I was sitting at Reed's Bar and I was a real pain from the very beginning, you know. I was dishonest, I was self-centered, resentful, you know, felt self-pity, you know, and all the personality characteristics of an alcoholic right from the beginning. I was just, and like in my second senior year or something, I was looking at the TV and I saw George McGovern ad, and he was talking about, you know, stopping the war and kicking Richard Nixon out of office, and it looked pretty good to me, so I signed up to work for George McGovern. Now, from the time I was a little kid, I read Jack London and Jack Kerouac and Woody Guthrie and Bob Dylan, and I had like this precious perception of our country and its people, but I always saw it through their eyes, and I wanted to see it through my own. And so I just became this migrant rambling around political and community organizer, and I worked for candidates and causes in most of the 50 states, and I just had so much fun. And it was kind of like a drinking tour of America, you know. And the thing about my drinking is, if I like what I'm doing and I'm happy with my life, I have like 4 beers and go home and get drunk once a month. But when my life goes haywire, then my drinking goes haywire. And so I'm doing okay in this period of my life because I like what I'm doing. And I had the most wonderful experiences. Like I would be, you know, we'd be running somebody for president of the United Mine Workers or something, and I'd be staying on some coal miner's sofa in Southwest Virginia, and I'd learn, you know, like there'd be like a river that ran through the little town, and the water in the river would be all reddish color, and the water that came out of the spigots would be all reddish color, and everybody had tombstones in their backyard where the grandparents and great-grandparents and great-great-grandparents were buried, and had like A.P. Carter lyrics on the tombstones. And I learned how to play a dulcimer, and I learned what the patterns on the quilts meant, and it was just really fun, and I would just have experiences like that all over the place. I also became a champion freeloader, and like maybe some guy is running for governor of Florida, and I would be in charge, like I would be in charge of Miami. So this rich guy, as a contribution to the campaign, would have the out-of-state organizer stay with him, who would be me. And I would move into his house, and I would, eat his food and drink his booze and walk his dogs and date his daughter. And then when the campaign was over, election came, I still didn't want to leave, And the funny thing is they liked having me, but I think it's my karma now that the newcomers come to my house and just stay forever, I remember this guy, I said, Bob's a newcomer, he lives on my sofa. He said, I'm not a newcomer, I have 2 years. I'm like, well, time to get the hell off my sofa, and give me back that channel changer, you all know how it is. So then I'm a pretty good BSer, so I talked them into letting me manage political campaigns, and I would run some guy for U.S. Senate in some state, I'd run somebody for governor in some other state, all Democrats that had like no chance of winning, and the disease progressed in me. Like I was in Virginia Beach, and I had a spectacular bicycle accident, and I smashed my head. And I had slurred speech and short-term memory problems. But no one notices when you're drunk all the time, you slur your speech and you can't remember anything, and so nobody really noticed. And that was really bad. And then my friend Henry, he was running for governor of Virginia, and he loved Jimmy Carter, just loved Jimmy Carter. And Jimmy Carter wanted to have this big rally where Virginia and West Virginia and Kentucky and Tennessee meet and have like 50,000 good Democrats and have music and dancing. And Henry told Jimmy that I would be the perfect guy to organize it. So, I went out there with slurred speech and short-term memory loss, just drinking a quart of gin a day and mourning the loss of whatever the hell her name was, and I screwed it all up. I had scheduled the band for the wrong day. I sent a Volkswagen Bug to the airport for 13 members of the press, and the worst thing was we were waiting for Carter's plane to land, and we were out of booze, and the plane was way late, like 5 minutes late. So I sent James, the limousine driver, for a six-pack, and of course the plane landed, and there was like no car, and I was stalling him, like, how's Rosalind, and how's Amy? And finally I was like, Peter, where's the car? And we had to rent a car. They declined my credit card. Carter had to use his own credit card. He was an hour late for his own rally. My friend was so mad at me. And I was like, I just blamed on something, like, hey, it was Jim Gibbs' fault, or... he should understand. He's Billy's brother, and after all, we were out of booze, And if I knew that he would someday become president, I would have been embarrassed to tears. No one else who I worked for ever got elected, so I just didn't expect it, And so then there was this wonderful man named Fred Harris, who was the United States Senator from Oklahoma, and he asked me to be. I was in charge of his New Hampshire. Iowa caucuses, and he asked me to be in charge of the New Hampshire primary. So I went to New Hampshire, and it was like there was like 3 feet of snow on the ground in Manchester, and I had a bad cold and a fever, and I had like more volunteers than all the other candidates put together. The only person that was happy that I was there was Jimmy Carter. He was glad I was now on the other side, and he found some comfort in that. And so one night, this guy, Michael Federico, I felt like Washington at Valley Forge or something, and this guy, Michael, and we sat up really late one night listening to the Bob Dylan Desire album and drinking just huge amounts of red wine, and the next morning, I was sitting at my desk, and I got really sick. The right side of my face got numb, the left side of my body got numb, and I got all confused and scared, and they took me to the hospital, and I was to not work for like a couple of years. I was really sick. And there was this kind little doctor outside of Boston in Newton who took me into his house, and he and his family tried to nurse me back to health. But after a few months, they just gave up because he just said I reminded him of someone that was shell-shocked from a war. But whatever was wrong with me was a result of alcoholism. And that's the stuff that happens to us. And I had this friend, Mary, who was like my girlfriend / nurse, and she was going to school at UCSB, so I came out to California, and she went to school, and I taught a little bit of political science, but mostly I just laid on the beach, and I was I had so much anxiety that I couldn't leave the apartment. I would leave the apartment to go down to the store, and I would get halfway to the store, and I would run back because I was just too scared to go out into the world. And if I had even a little bit of alcohol, I got deathly sick. Was just made me sick. But what I did was I worked hard to get my tolerance back so I could drink like 4 beers without getting sick. Well, who else but an alcoholic would do that? Reason being, I didn't really know how to live without alcohol. And that's the problem that we have when we get here. When we get here, we can't keep drinking. We're having trouble with our health, with our mental health, with our family, with our marriage, with our friends, with our job, with the criminal justice system, but we can't not drink. because we don't know how to live without alcohol. And that's the rock and the hard place that we're between when we get here. And that's why we need this program, because you have to replace it with something. And so that's how I was. And so what happened was I got my tolerance back, and then I thought I'm way too important for Santa Barbara now, and I went to San Francisco, and I got 2 jobs. I got a job running an animal welfare agency, and I got a job as a firefighter for the city. And now this is really good. If you're an alcoholic or an Al-Anon, we love to rescue people and animals, and so I would rescue dogs and cats all day and people all night, and then go to the bar and talk about it, and I was doing great. Now I'm only drinking like 4 beers a day and only getting drunk once a month, and I'm controlling and enjoying my drinking. Then comes the part of my story where my friend Art always made the sign of the cross. I met this girl named Amy. She came to work at the animal welfare agency, and she was like a volunteer for the summer education, humane education program. And it was just like, oh my God, I was so cuckoo over this girl. It's just like an affliction, you know. And if I never feel like that again, it would really be okay, you know. And it's just, God, you know. We were about the same age. I was 33 and she was 18. And so it came time for her to go back to school at Berkeley in the fall, and she was having trouble seeing the future in our relationship. I don't know why. And I thought, you know, I didn't do anything any good alcoholic, you know, wouldn't do. I staked out her house to see when she was coming home, and staked out all the guys' houses to see if she was with them. And I got drunk and visited her at work. I think that's always a sign of caring. And I would call up her house really drunk in the middle of the night and talk to her father. He was president of the American Psychiatric Association. He taught medicine at Stanford. He'd say, is this an emergency? I'd say, yeah, Amy just left the bar with a Coke dealer. Yeah, we'll call back tomorrow, son, you know. So, you know, I went down to Sunnyvale, where they have George Jones on the jukebox, If Drinking Don't Kill Me, Your Memory Will, and stuff like that. You know, country singers, they don't have to worry about double negatives or anything like that, just the way the lyrics are. And I went down there, and I thought, I'll just get drunk at her, you know. And I didn't, and I stayed drunk for like 2 years. And I lost my job as a firefighter. I lost my job at the Animal Welfare Agency. I'm now like in my 3rd senior year going to University of San Francisco. I kicked out of there. I ended up not even having a place to stay. And it was so bad. I had, I would go into a bar, right, and the bartender would be real nice for a couple of days, and then he'd just say, you know what, you just go drink somewhere else. Or I would walk into a bar, and the bartender would say, Amy, right, and I knew I'd been in there. I just turn around and walk right back out. And the animal welfare agency that I worked for was called Pets in Need, and these people had a nickname for me. They called me Pizza in Need, and I was going down the street, you know, and I would have wet my pants, and some guy would see me. Some guy saw me coming, and he tried to cross the street so I wouldn't be on the same side of the street as me, and he was hit by a car. And I went up and I said, you know, serves you right. I was only going to try to borrow $5, you know. And there, around Stanford University in Palo Alto, there are many bars, and the bartenders that work there sell both alcohol and cocaine. And regardless of what bar they worked in, they all lived in the same house that looked like a haunted house in Menlo Park. And they took me in and let me sleep on the floor with a shaggy dog named Bob. And Bob didn't like sharing the floor with me anymore, and I like sharing the floor with him. He would growl at me and stuff, and they would all come home. These guys would come home after the bar closed at like 3:30 or something. They have all this booze and all this dope, you know, and you know, we just party. And then I'd come 2 in the morning, and there'd be like a sea of people in the living room, which is my bedroom and Bob's bedroom, and I'd be like, oh, you know, I'm way too coked up to get up, and I'd be like, but I'm way too tired from partying I'm way too coked up to sleep, but I'm way too tired from partying to get up. I don't know where that purgatory place, you know, and all the little Mercedes are outside on their way to going to, you know, Silicon Valley to work. And so I'd try to find a can of beer that didn't have a cigarette butt in it, and then I'd try to find a cigarette butt. But, you know, when you snort cocaine all night, not too many long butts in the ashtrays, and you light it, you gag because you're hungover and it's strong. And then I'd just start going through everybody's pants pockets to get some change to buy some beer and cigarettes, and they'd be like, oh, that's probably just Pizza Need going through our pants pockets, you know. And I woke up every morning like that for a year, and I would rather be dead than to live like that again. I'd much rather be dead. Everybody in this room is destined to find an ending like that unless we find a spiritual solution to our disease. At least that's what I believe. Then it got worse. I ended up in Santa Cruz, and I was sleeping outside and begging for food at the back door of restaurants and picking up cigarette butts off the street. I told my dog Zeke we were camping, and I used to eat in the soup kitchen by the roller coaster, pretending I was a volunteer. And I did for a while live in a luxury hotel. I mean, it was a luxury hotel when it was built during the Civil War, but it wasn't anymore. The St. George Hotel, it's like the Salvation Army pays your way to stay there. And, you know, the whole place is like on a tilt, you know, and you could put an orange on the floor and just roll to the wall. And you walk to the men's room like this. And my next door neighbor was Richard. He looked like Charles Manson, and he had a big beard. And he used to let me watch him shoot up heroin. I was so fascinated by that. And he had peanut butter and instant coffee. When somebody has peanut butter and instant coffee and you're in the bum, it's like a rich person, you know. And Richard had lived in Marin County for like 25 years. And so I said, Richard, where did you live in Marin County? And he said, San Quentin. I said, I should have known that. And so I have a cousin who lives in Santa Monica who practices law downtown. And she's a very bright girl. Like, she was a Fulbright fellow and, you know, Phi Beta Kappa and Harvard Law School and the whole thing. And she was one of the youngest partners in this big firm downtown. And we always thought that she was very smart until she offered to take me in and rehabilitate me. So my aunt and my mom and my other aunt and my cousins, they maneuvered me onto a Trailways bus in Oakland with $40. My cousin Eddie showed up and gave me two $20 bills and put me on a bus for LA, and she met me, and it was a nightmare. Like, my dogs got shipped down. They had been stored in by some guy in East Palo Alto. They looked like dogs from a Humane Society ad, and they would dig up her yard, and I would drink everything in her house. And her neighbors were Chinese, and my dogs would jump over the fence, steal all their shoes, and bring them over into my cousin's house and yard, and they hated that. And so I decided that I would stop drinking, and I really tried hard. And you know, every day I went out, and if you gave me a lie detector test, it would show I really meant to not have a drink that day, but I couldn't get past the first bar. And the book tells us that we know we shouldn't drink, and we see someone else drinking with impunity, so we take a drink, and the phenomenon of craving occurs, and we pass through the well-known stages of a spree, and we emerge remorseful, vowing to never do it again, and then we do it again. And there isn't anybody in these rooms that isn't destined to die like that unless we find a spiritual solution to our disease. So that's what I would want. My cousin, I'm now scared because I'm drinking against my will. And my cousin went to San Diego, to La Costa for the weekend, and my mom had sent $1,000 for me to move out of my cousin's house with, which my cousin thought that God had sent, and she went away. And I thought to myself, you know, I wouldn't need this whole $1,000 to move out of my cousin's house. And so I thought, I'll have a moving out party. So I got some cocaine, and I got my drug of choice, which was Tanqueray gin. And I wasn't doing a lot of dating at the time, so I got a couple of dates out of the Yellow Pages, and I had like a moving out party. And so in the morning, I'll never forget, there was only like 30 cents left of the $1,000. And I thought, oh my God, my cousin's going to kill me. She's going to kill me. And I went into the bathroom. I was so sick, and I had the worst hangover I ever had. And when I went to throw up, it was all blood. And I saw everything. I saw all. You know, my grandfather delivered me. He named me. He wanted me to have his medical practice after him. I was this altruistic little kid that liked everybody, and everybody liked him, and I had the potential to make a real contribution to the world, and had already to a certain extent. And I was just like every other street drunk dying in Santa Monica. It was just and I saw myself, and I got down on my knees in my cousin Amy's kitchen, and I asked God to help me, and I got up and I called Alcoholics Anonymous. It was like the first thing in the Yellow Pages. I didn't know who to call. And this guy, the central office they said, someone will call you. And about 3 minutes later, the phone rang, and it was this guy named Jim. And he said, where do you live? I said, I live on 10th Street in Santa Monica. He said, so do I. I'll be right there. And he came and he picked me up. And he took me over to the Marina Center. And at the time, they had a restaurant upstairs, and they bought me dinner, and they bought me a big book. And when we were holding hands saying the Lord's Prayer, I started to cry, and I hadn't cried in years, and I knew I was all done gambling, you know. And the book says we need to be badly mangled. And I was badly mangled. And if you're new tonight, I hope you're desperate, because it's good for us to be desperate. And I was completely crazy. I was so crazy. Oh my God. I got a sponsor, Ronnie. He made me get 7 commitments. My cousin had this old car, and the brakes went out, and I didn't didn't want to tell her because I was afraid she'd take it away from me, so I had to stop it with the parking brake. And I had all the coffee pots from Sunday, Ohio in the back, and I'm driving around with the parking brake, and they're rattling around, and I got all the jobs you get when you're new. I met a guy at the meeting, and he was there on a court card, and he's a tree trimmer, and he told me just meet him at the laundromat in Beverlywood, and I went, and he was just drunk as a dog, and we went out, and he was like, just cut any limbs you want, you know, and he had these prostitutes that raked the leaves, and my job was like to take him to the methadone clinic every day at 1 with the car and the parking brakes and the coffee pots, and oh my God. And then I got a job with some AA guru in a boiler room, you know, where you call up some lady in Florida and tell her a bunch of lies and try to sell her 1,000,000 pens. And now we'd come home, and my sister's boyfriend, he wasn't very impressed, and we knew you didn't want to get a job, you know. I mean, I was so crazy. I mean, it's hard being new. I remember taking a 60-day trip at 26 and Broadway and giving a rousing 20-minute address, you know, and it took an astronaut, Buzz A, to talk me safely down into my seat. And he said, I hope I'm not here when you get 90 days. I said, I hope you're not either. What have you ever done? You know, and that was it, you know, and so my cousin, I sort of wore my welcome out at my cousin's, so my sponsor took me over to the Claire Foundation, and that's where I met this man named Arthur East. Art was about 75 years old, and he had a full head of silver permed hair and always wore a nice sport coat and a neckerchief and drove a new big car and jingled his keys. And he had been a mobster for Meyer Lansky in the old days, and he was sober about 20 years. And I went into the bathroom and I got on my knees and asked them, God, for them to take me in because I didn't want to be homeless again. And Art said, well, if you're going to live here, you might as well where the coffee is. And Art always knew what to say, and he let me sleep on the sofa in his office, and he'd wake me up every morning jingling his keys. Mr. Pete, time to get up. He's all I had in the world. Like a stray dog will follow you when you take him home. Art's all I had in the world, and I was really lucky. He's a great guy. He taught me stuff. You want to have friends, be a friend. You want to have a good sobriety, mind your own business. You want to be happy. Happiness is just a byproduct of love and service. He said, you need a car. He gave me his mother-in-law's old car. He said, you need a job. He got me a job working in a liquor store. And then about a year later, he said, you need a better job. He got me a job in charge of fundraising and public relations for Claire Foundation. And he just was wonderful. You know, I got a couple of mayor's commendations, one for CPR and one for something else. And he was so proud of me, you know. And so anyway, I wanted to be like Art. I rented a house down in Hawthorne, and I took in all these newcomers, and they burglarized the neighbors and caught the house on fire, and we had psychiatric emergencies, and, you know, I put them all in Robert Kennedy Hospital, and they made me belts and stuff, but I stayed sober. And Art was in Santa Monica Hospital, and he wasn't in very good shape. He'd say, I need you to come up. The nurses don't know how to fix my pillows. And I would come, and I would just put 2 pillows one way and 2 the other way. He just wanted to see me, that's all, you know. And he helped thousands of guys like he helped me. And the day before he died, he told me, you know, Pete, you're my best friend. And the day that Art died, I was in there, and there was this little street drunk named Kenny, and he was sober at the time, and we were with Art when he died, and Kenny later died on Leo's on my front lawn of our disease. But it was sad, but it was also beautiful that we could be there for Art, you know. And I read a eulogy at his funeral, and I knew he would have been proud of me. These are, you know, this is all the stuff that matters. I mean, nobody really gives a shit how long you're sober for, or how many people you sponsor, or how you look like on the outside, or how much money you make, or anything else, you know. And I mean, let's face it, I mean, humility and sobriety go together. How could anybody hold themselves up as knowing more than the next person and be sober at the same time? I mean, we're all just, you know, lost together and finding ourselves together, you know. And I think that the love that we share and the help that we give each other, that's the whole thing. I think it's a big deal when we get sober and a big deal when we die, and I think after that it's all just smoke and mirrors. A person sitting beside you could be gone tomorrow. I've lost so many people that I loved in this program, so many. I spoke at a few months ago, I spoke at the Solana Club down in Newport Beach, and behind the podium, it's like a big concrete block wall, and the concrete blocks are about, you know, 4 inches by 8 inches or something, and everybody that goes to the club writes their name on them, and some of them have their full name, like Joe Jakowski, and some just have like nicknames like Serenity Sue or whatever. And when someone dies, they write a little in memory of on the person's block over their name. And of the 300 or 400 names on that wall, about half of them said in memory of, and I looked at it and I just saw this tapestry of humanity, you know, that was this club, you know. Just amazing, you know, and that's what we're so lucky to have here. We're so lucky to have this program and have each other, and we need to be good to each other and help each other. I've been on the wrong track in sobriety. I will tell you that you can find you know, the most perfect lover or the best job or the most money or whatever, and it just doesn't do a thing for you. That's bad news. I hope I'm not breaking any bad news to you. That happiness really comes from within us. It's an inside job. You know, I know many people who were driven by their parents to achieve. They became great surgeons or great scientists or whatever, and they were still miserable. Achieving didn't do it. And people thought, if I just really find love, and they find the best lover, and they end up being resentful toward the person because it didn't fix them, you know. And we really have, you know, we have a spiritual malady. Our drinking is just a symptom. Our drinking is just a symptom, and we come here to get healed, you know, and getting a bunch of stuff in life isn't going to heal us. No, and I believe that anyway. So anyway, I used to stay I wrote an inventory. I got Howard P. to be my sponsor because Ronnie couldn't deal with me anymore, and I wrote this inventory. Howard knew he was in trouble when he had to help me carry it up the stairs. So about every hour he'd nod up, you know, you did what? I slept with his wife. You don't do that again. He'd nod back off again, you know. And then he taught me how to meditate, I think. Making my amends was really powerful. The hardest amend I had to make was I wrecked my best friend's wedding in Oregon. And they didn't invite me for good reason. And I thought, what a nice present if I just showed up, you know. So I went up there, and I remember the bride crying and the sheriff's deputies helping me out of the place. And I thought, you know, if I ever go back there, they'll kill me. But I had to go find him. You know, his wife came up to me, and she gave me a big hug and kiss, and she said, you know, Petey, we love you. When are you going to come and stay with us again? And that was so healing, you know, and all that fear for nothing. You know, I'm also a recovered big shot. I'm way too important to pay you a portion of what I owe you. If I had just given a small amount to make my financial amends, I would have been out of debt by the time I was 2 years sober. I just was too scared, too proud or whatever. And what else? I'm also a recovered guru. I used to sponsor like a dozen guys and have them come to my house every Wednesday night. And they should have called the Do As I Say, Not As I Do group of Alcoholics Anonymous. And then one night, I just had to admit to them all that I really didn't know anything and they shouldn't come back. And we were all relieved, you know. And I'll tell you, running all of West LA was really a big job. Like he hit her, so she shouldn't marry him, and he doesn't pay him enough, so he shouldn't work for him. And they're identifying phlegmatics at the podium. And I've heard this boring SOB speak 100 times, and you know, it's just such a big job. And then one day, just like I did all the other jobs I've ever had, I just got resentful and quit, you know, and it's wonderful, you know, to just not have to worry about it. Occasionally I'll bump into somebody who has my old job of running West LA, and they're not any happier than I was, and nobody likes them any more than they like me, you know. I was at another program when I was new, I won't mention it, but it was a bunch of Latino guys that shoot drugs, and this guy says to me, I was whining about something, and he says, man, you see that sidewalk square? I go, yeah. All you got to worry about is what's inside that square. I said, you don't understand. Leo asked Joe for a cigarette, and he gave him one, and not in your square, man, you know? And it's wonderful to just go through life, and I mean, I'll help anyone, and if I see that someone needs help, I'm happy to help them. I mean, my house is a menagerie of lost people and pets, you know, but I mean, I really think minding your own business and sobriety is a wonderful thing, you know, and I don't have any resentments today, not even one. And if you don't pay attention to what other people do, then you won't judge them. And if you don't judge them, then you won't resent them, you know. And some other things I've learned, you have to get rid of the popularity contest. You know, if you're going to live a spiritual life, you can't worry whether everybody likes you or not, especially if you're active around here. And let's face it, not everybody here is, I mean, of course everybody in this room's okay, but not everybody's entirely well on our program, you know, and who cares, you know who you are. If you're a good person, no, I mean, you're a good person, you know who you are. And that's important. And meditation's so important to me. Oh yeah, when I was living in my car behind the Marina Center, which is embarrassing for a guru, this guy Tom said to me, hey Pete, they used to call my car Pete's Hotel. This guy Tom said, you know, you can get a job. You can drive your hotel around. You get paid every Friday. You get a job as a messenger. So I got a job as a messenger. And today I own my own messenger service. Have like, what do we have, 70 employees? Leo runs the company. He has for 10 years. It's a multi-million-dollar corporation. It's huge. It's thriving. I'm spoiled rotten. Spoiled rotten. Big complaints. Oh, the girl that I like to get a massage from isn't at Burke Williams anymore. When I go to La Scala, I can't get to see anything but Verdi because it's the 100th anniversary of his death. You know, these are tough problems to have in life, you know, and I mean, I'm spoiled rotten. And I'm like, my company failed many times. I would come in there and they'd be like, oh, Pete, all the checks you wrote bounced and everybody quit. I'm like, oh, that's bad. Yeah, Pete, that's bad, you know, and we'll do better tomorrow, you know. And I'm like this frog. I'm like this frog that fell in a big vat of milk, and I just kept thrashing around and swimming around because I didn't want to drown. Ended up sitting on a big brick of butter, you know, and that's because I didn't drink and I didn't give up. And what else can I tell you? I have 5 more minutes, and my life is kind of a fine balance between, you know, I think it's important for us to be current in all our affairs as best as we can. Having said that, we have to live with whatever the best is that we can, you know. And so, I mean, like in my life, I mean, every part of my life is sort of a disaster. Like if you look at my health, the doctor asked me if I had a will. That's a bad. I was hoping he had a brother that was a lawyer and he's trying to make $1 for him. I mean, my finances. I told the IRS I thought filing quarterly meant every 4 years. They did not believe that. You know, I have problems in that area. Relationship problems. I mean, I get these dates, and the only time I get to hold their hand is during the Lord's Prayer, and it's like my idea of a long-term relationship is just to buy a lap dance from the same girl every time I go, you know, and it's tough in that department. And but like I'm so happy, I'm almost embarrassed to say how happy and whole I am, you know, and because I am trying, you know, I do my best. My life, I have the most wonderful life today, and my friends to me are like gold. And you know, my sponsor, recently I had this sort of thing where, you know, it's just one of those things where you like somebody more than she likes you, you know, and it wasn't, so I had, I don't know, I was like really sad, you know, just really, really sad. Too sad to do anything, too sad to go to work, too sad to go to the gym. I was just sad. I lost like 40 pounds and you know, and my sponsor's just been trying to help me see, you know, some of the things. But it's like this guy, Neil Donald Walsh, writes those books, Conversation with God and Friendship with God and all that. And I was looking at this book today, and he says he's talking to God, and I guess he's finally getting it. And the gist of it is that we want to master the spiritual life. And the master is someone who sees all outcomes as perfect, you know. And we even if the outcome isn't one that we think is favorable for us, and that the master really doesn't have any time for contempt. There's no room for contempt in the process, because that's that which we condemn, we hope we keep with us. And that when we go through life and we don't, if we're willing to just like every outcome, then it's no longer necessary to trust God, because and then we really can trust God, because we're not asking for any particular outcome, because we're seeing every outcome as being perfect. And that all that is required for all of us to evolve, as we're supposed to evolve, is just to experience exactly what we're experiencing right here at this moment. That's all that's required. We don't have to do anything more. And that everything that we want and need in our life will come to us. The universe is very generous. And my sponsor, Howard, tells me if I do what's put in front of me every day, I do it to the best of my ability, and I do it lovingly. See, to me, being good isn't like not smoking and not drinking and not having sex. No, being good is, people who are being really good, I think, is really mostly invisible to us. And it has to do with the way we weave ourselves into the universe. And if it's with love and tenderness, then I think we're good people, and we're helping to make a better world. you know. And so anyway, I lost my train of thought. I'm so sorry. But anyway, he was saying that my sponsor Howard was saying that the universe is very generous, and that we do what's put in front of us, and we do it as best as we can, and we do it as lovingly as we can, and everything that we then need will come to us. Everything. We don't have to worry. Don't be scared of losing something you have, or be scared of not getting something you need. But when you say, I know I should be doing this, but I really want this, and I'm gonna lie, cheat, steal, finagle, club, and I'm gonna get her, or I'm gonna get it, or whatever, it never works. It never works. And we screw it all up. But if we just do what's put in front of us very well and very lovingly, and accept every outcome in the world, see everything as perfect in the world, everything that happens as perfect in divine order, we will be so blessed and so open to receive every good thing. Anyway, I know that. So that's about it. I don't really know anything about it all, except I just do it a day at a time. And I wish you all sobriety and happiness and love and good health and peace. And thank you for listening to me.
Sorry to interrupt your viewing. Taper Dave here. Just wanted to take a second to ask you to like and subscribe to my channel. Let me know if you like what you're listening. I've got some very good talks here, and this one's a great one. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Tell me what you think. Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst and one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right, but I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.